Hey everybody, today I want to revisit a topic I've talked about in the past, and that is that there is no excuse for a fish in cycle. Now, I've gotten a lot of comments on the videos I've shot in the past about it, and some people seem to have different ideas of what I mean when I say a fish in cycle. Other people seem to just not care and think it doesn't really matter. They can go ahead and do it that way anyway because it's just a couple of fish, so who cares? And again, I reiterate, there's simply no excuse for a fish in cycle. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. And first, we are going to define what I mean when I say a fish in cycle. There's a lot of people out there that will simply use fish as an ammonia source. They'll tell you to get a couple of hardy fish, and there's even people in fish stores that will recommend this to beginners as a way to get your tank cycled in. They'll tell you to get some hardy fish. Apparently there's some fish out there that don't mind being exposed to ammonia. Tell you to get some hardy fish. They'll tell you to go ahead and put them in your tank and just let the tank cycle. There's no intention of keeping the ammonia in check or making sure the pH is right or any of that kind of stuff. You're simply using the fish as an ammonia source while you let the tank cycle in. It doesn't speed the process up. It doesn't accomplish anything other than using fish as a source of ammonia to allow the tank to cycle naturally. It still takes weeks to cycle naturally, and you're just letting the fish swim around in the tank while it's cycling. And of course the fish usually die, and if they don't die, that's the point of using like mollies or hardy fish. If they don't die, they've still suffered and you've still done a lot of damage to their gills and so on and so forth. Fish just aren't meant to be swimming around in ammonia water. So again, there's simply no excuse to do this. If you're going to take the time to allow the tank to cycle and you're using the fish as an ammonia source, why? Why would you use the fish as an ammonia source? Just use an ammonia source. You can put fish food in there. The fish, just take the fish food you're putting in the tank and convert it into waste. It becomes ammonia a little bit faster by going through the fish first. But it's still the fish food that's becoming the ammonia. You don't need the fish in the tank. Just throw some fish food in the tank and wait. It's what I've always done. That's how I've always done it. Recently, I was going to do some experiments on cycling a tank in and trying to rapidly cycle it, and I never worked out those experiments because I wound up using the tank as a quarantine tank instead. But I did buy some ammonium chloride. It's Dr. Tim's ammonium chloride. I'll put a link down to it below. It is $7.99 for a bottle that I would imagine you could cycle a swimming pool in with that much ammonia. But you can use that as an ammonia source. There's just no reason whatsoever to use fish as an ammonia source to cycle a tank in. Now, if you're talking about a situation where you've got fish and now you're just learning that you were supposed to cycle the tank first and you're stuck in the situation where you've already got fish in an uncycled tank, that's a different story. There are ways you can do that. In fact, one of my more popular videos is about keeping fish alive. If I remember, I will attach a card to that video, but you can get a fish through a cycle while keeping it alive. That's different than a fish in cycle. That's not using the fish as an ammonia source. That's that will actually slow your cycle process down by trying to keep those fish alive while you're also trying to cycle the tank, because you have to keep your ammonia to a minimum. If you're just going to allow the tank to cycle and you're just using the fish as an ammonia source, why? Why use a living animal as the ammonia source? That just makes absolutely no sense to me. If it's a cost thing, how are you saving money by using fish? Just leave the fish out of the equation and just put some fish food in the tank and wait. Again, it's no different than having the fish in there. Now, again, I'm not talking about, I don't want to wait 6 weeks. I really, really want to put a fish in there. How do I do that? How do I get a fish in there while it's cycling and get that fish through it safely? That's a different scenario, and there are ways to do that. I don't recommend doing that, but there are ways you can do that, and that's not what I'm talking about when I say a fish in cycle. So for anybody that's gotten stuck in the situation, or there's somebody like me who just knows you can do it that way, and if you don't feel like waiting, you can just buy fish and set the tank up all on the same day. It's risky, it's more time consuming and labor intensive. You've really got to know what you're doing when you do it. You got to sit on the tank like a mother hen. But you can do it, and you can get the fish through it with relatively minor exposure to any real ammonia. And if you know what you're doing with your pH and you can keep the water slightly acidic, you can get the fish through it without any real exposure to the ammonia at all. But again, that's topics for other videos. The idea that just using fish to cycle a tank is just so outdated and so archaic to me. I can't believe people still do it. But people still recommend it. You can go to stores and the people will still recommend, oh, just get a couple of mollies or get some guppies and put them in there, and just, the tank will cycle. It'll take care of itself. You're basically sacrificing fish for no purpose whatsoever. I could understand it if the alternative was really costly or really time consuming or really labor intensive and complicated, and it's easier just to use a couple of fish, and I don't like doing it, but I could understand that. But why would you use fish when you can simply just use fish food and accomplish exactly the same thing? It's actually easier to not use fish. It's less expensive to not use fish, and yet people still put fish in the tank as a source of ammonia. It just makes no sense to me, and I still say there's no excuse for it. So don't try to justify it. Don't try to tell me it's just a couple of mollies, I don't care, or whatever. If that's your attitude, then that's your attitude. I don't care. But that's not my attitude. To me, there's no excuse for that. So again, don't try to justify that to me, because there's just no excuse for that. There's no reason to just kill fish or abuse fish for the sake of cycling a tank in. But that's my 2 cents. I'd be interested to hear yours. Make sure you leave a comment down below. Make sure you're subscribed, ring that bell, all that good YouTube stuff that you hear at the end of every video. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget, this one here is my waterfall tank, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.